Welcome back to another episode of the Awareness to Action Enneagram podcast. My name is Creek, and I'm with my vertiginous co-hosts, María, Sikora, and María, José, Munita. María, José, how are you feeling today?
Better.
Vertiginous.
Yeah, vertiginous. That's it. I had an episode of vertigo yesterday, and I wasn't feeling great. It was awful, actually.
Oof.
But I'm feeling better today.
Yeah, it looks like it. You're wearing really bright colors. Are you feeling
Trying to bring
transmitty
myself.
today?
Yeah, no, I just want to feel with more energy. But
Yeah,
I'm
I like it. I think it's a great color on you.
Yeah. That's fuchsia, isn't it? Is that what color that
No,
is?
it's just red. It's a sort of
It's
red.
just red.
Sort of
Well,
red,
maybe
yeah.
on the screen you see it like that, but trust me,
Okay.
I see it here,
Yeah.
and it's red.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Mario, that color also looks good on you.
Black is the new black.
And well, I was going to say, and listeners, if you want to know what color Mario's wearing, you should go check out our YouTube channel and watch the Awareness to Action and the Enneagram in a Movie podcast on YouTube.
Yes, and don't forget to look for Thinking Well and Why. Also,
Exactly.
not on YouTube, but
you can listen to it on YouTube.
Okay, there you go.
But we are not doing video at the moment. So,
Yes.
all right. So today we are talking about coaching nines. I don't have a clever transition today, unfortunately, which, might work for the nines, we're just going to cruise through.
Where are they?
And yeah, the absence of the transition is the transition. So Mario, tell us a little bit about striving to feel peaceful.
So the 9 is striving to feel peaceful. It's interesting with 9s. People always assume that 9s are lazy and or they don't stand up for themselves, and they're not going to be successful people and all of that. That's just not my experience, right? I've worked with a lot of 9s who are senior leaders in organizations. I'd say it's one of the more common types that I've interacted with. Now, they do run into challenges, and the challenges are very predictable, right? But I really want to dispel this idea that, 9s are lazy, right? Or 9s are not ambitious or something like that. They're just as ambitious as any other type. But when they start to struggle, it looks very specific. And it usually has to do with kind of diminishing themselves in some way, right? This is the big issue that we run into with 9 leaders, the 9s that we work with, is a tendency to devalue themselves, to put themselves down, to self-deprecate. And it's usually one of the first things that we talk to them about in our coaching engagements. Watch out for this tendency to self-deprecate. One of the reasons why they often rise to leadership positions is because they're really good at keeping their composure, right? They're really good at staying calm. They're really good at, I'm going to say they're really good at building consensus, but often it's more they're good at seeking and finding consensus, which can also be a limitation. Okay, because sometimes when you're looking to build consensus, you're not driving the organization forward, or you're not progressing well enough. So one of the things that I often talk to 9 clients about is, let's make sure that you're shaping consensus, not just settling for consensus. María, what would you add?
I think that some of the good things, it's that they generate like a good climate, or it's nice to work with them. And,
Vibe?
Yeah, it could be vibe. They're nice to deal with. They're easygoing most times, and they have this like calming effect. So it's easy and nice to hang out around them or with them.
Yeah.
And they involve team members and give them visibility. They don't want to be the ones getting all the attention, so they try to kind of nurture and show their reports, their teams. So you see teams that have visibility to the rest of the organization, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
Until they hide the leaders, actions or accomplishments. But in a balanced way, it's a really good thing.
Yeah, they bring a sense of, like María said, calm to things, stability. They're unfazed by things very often. So when nines in a leadership role can have this sort of calming effect on the rest of the group, and again, that's all good when it's good. Downside to that is that it can suppress energy. Right, it can hinder enthusiasm, and it can stall speed of execution and those sort of things. So, the nines, their growth path is to watch for the ways in which they are hindering progress and slowing things down unnecessarily. I won't start listing all the developmental areas for them.
Yeah, so we're pretty much done, I think.
Yeah, right. Well, I've got more to say, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was going to bring up, you all are notorious for telling people that they're transmitting nines.
Only if we don't know what else they are. That's
Yeah.
Well, there must be a transmitting nine.
So I imagine on some level that the mistyping has something to do, just the stereotype, but I imagine has something to do with the lines as well, and people not quite understanding how the lines interact with the type. María, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so nines, I was going to say transmitting nines. No, all nines, the connecting points are 3 and 6. So the support strategy is type 6, and the neglected strategy is type 3. So the support strategy at type 6 is striving to feel secure. And many times when I'm doing workshops, and I think it's your experience, Mario, as well, that one of the most common troubles for people to kind of get identified, it's between 6 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
And mainly it's because nines feel more at peace when they have covered their bases. So they use that as a way to feel peaceful, not secure in and of itself. Now that gets them to, hold back, not take risks, because risks are going to make them feel less peaceful.
Not peaceful, yeah.
Yes, less peaceful. Yeah. But it's not as a 6 would. It's not with the anxiety that 6s bring most times. Yeah. Type 3, on the other hand, it's what they avoid. Because in their minds, what they're trying to avoid is being seen as arrogant or self-centered. So that's what they try to kind of not go. And that gets them into trouble, because when they kind of hide themselves or avoid standing out or resist standing out or avoid promoting themselves and their accomplishments, they end up being overlooked. People do not see how much they value what they are able to, what they're capable of. And they resent that. It's not like they're okay with it. It creates conflict for them, an inner conflict, because they don't like it. But on the other hand, they avoid it. So there's a contradiction there. And as your question, Creek, about transmitting nines, I think transmitting nines deal with a piece of that better, because the transmitting kind of impulse gets them to show themselves more, to be more out there. Although they're still uncomfortable or not completely comfortable, they're more comfortable than the other 2 subtypes. And that's why people do not see them as nines, but they are. When you see them when they are, at home or at different other places, not on stage or in the flashlight, or when you ask them how they feel when they are on stage. And most times they just want to finish with that and go home, get down the stage. So that's how the two connecting points work for them.
Yeah. I just want to clarify something, Maria Jose. You said that they avoid type 3, and it's not so much type 3s that they're avoiding, although they might, but it's the strategy at point 3 of striving to feel outstanding, right? And this is kind of one of my key questions that I ask somebody if I think they might be a 9 is, how would you feel if somebody thought that you were arrogant? And you can see them flinch, right? I mean, it's like, and you ask somebody else that question, they'll be like, well, whatever, I don't like that, but, who cares? But with 9s, it's like, that's kind of the worst thing you could be, right? If you look under the hood at what's happening in the psyche of a 9, they have this deep concern that they're not really good enough, that they're not lovable or something, right? So they get these messages that I love you most when you stay out of the way. And I remember talking to a 9 years ago, and he told me that when he was older, his mother said to him, you were my favorite child because I could just put you in the middle of the living room floor and you would lay there for hours playing with your feet. Right. So it was like, you're not bothering me, so I love you the most, whereas these other ones are bothering me. So the 9 gets this message of don't bother. And, 9s never want to be a bother to other people. So they're very sensitive about asserting their own needs, very careful about it. And so whenever they start to feel like they're, getting a little big for their britches, they start self-deprecating. And like Maria Jose said, that can be really detrimental to their career, because if you go around telling everybody how not special you are, they're going to believe you, right? And we've seen lots of 9s who get passed over for promotion for reasons that nobody can really describe or, really identify. But what's happening is they're seeing this person who's really capable and does great work and is liked by everybody. But, there's just something missing. And what that missing thing is, the value that the 9 has been downplaying all along.
Yeah, so, they look like if they were not ambitious enough.
Yeah.
They were not hungry enough. And many times they are. Not always, of course,
right.
But many times they are, but they do a really good job at hiding it.
Yeah. To go back to the transmitting 3 thing,
9.
I'm sorry, transmitting 9. Yeah. Your comment about how we're kind of telling people that it's almost like, it's funny. It's almost like we kind of discovered an unclassified type, right? I mean, because to my knowledge, nobody else has this real description of a transmitting 9 the way that we see it. And so most people will get lumped in as like a preserving 3 or just a 3 in those terms. But I remember back, this was before I got married, so it's over 25 years ago, talking with my father-in-law, who is a transmitting 9. And when I met this guy, I thought for sure he was a 3, right? I mean, he just, had expensive watches and jewelry and always drove really expensive cars. And he just had a big personality and all this stuff. And and so he was asking me about what I do, and I was telling him a little bit about the Enneagram. And so I'm thinking he's a 3. And he went online and he took I think it was the Ready test, and he scored as a 9. And I'm like, what? And he says, yeah, I scored like a perfect score on the 9, and I started thinking about it, and I realized, yeah, he is a 9, right? He's just this different kind of 9. And, and then I started seeing more of this, and it turned out it was that, transmitting bias. So it really is kind of a different category of people. And again, this is why the subtypes are so important to understand when you're working with people, because the preserving 9 is a very different character, right? I mean, they're still both 9s, but they're night and day affectively.
And can the folks out there be looking forward to more episodes specifically about the subtypes?
if people are good and they rate our podcast and subscribe to it, then we might just go with the subtitle.
All right.
Yeah, that's what's on our minds at the moment. We might change our
Might
minds
change 5 minutes before we hit record, as has been known to happen.
We're flexible.
Wait a
Who
minute, I
said
got
that
an idea.
once we're not flexible? I'm flexible.
So we've mentioned a few strengths and challenges that you encounter when coaching nines. What are the other common ones that you, obviously the non-deprecating, but we've all heard that one from you a million times. MJ, what are you?
Yeah, I think that the main thing besides the self-deprecation, which in fact you can really spot when you're coaching a nine, at some point they will say something.
Yeah.
And when they do, it's the best opportunity to bring it up, to show it to them and see what it does. The other thing is that they avoid conflict. They tend to be very conflict averse, and they are scanning for conflict and kind of classifying things under kind of a conflict source or not. They will avoid or try to avoid whatever brings conflict to the table. What they do not understand is that, and this is part of the awareness to action process, is that if you avoid a conflict now, it will probably grow. And it will not make you feel peaceful necessarily. If you avoid it, you might still go away and continue to think about it, be mad, be anxious, whatever, and it will not disappear. But they do not see that all of us, we address issues in a short-term, with a short-term mentality. And for them, I prefer to avoid it now without counting what it does in the long term. And that's one of the key things to work on with a nine.
Yeah, it's funny. Every time I ask a nine, how do you deal with conflict? They will always say, well, I don't have a problem with conflict. I just, it just doesn't make much sense to me. So, if I can, I avoid it. I pick my battles, that sort of thing. And what they're saying is, I avoid it like the plague, right? And, and it's funny because some nines, particularly if they're under a lot of stress or not psychologically healthy, are really angry people, right? And can be kind of explosive people because they're working so hard to, avoid conflict and suppress their anger that it just kind of explodes, right? So, I've had nines who are pretty angry people sometimes, right? So just because somebody loses their temper and yells and even picks a fight or something like that doesn't mean they're not a nine. It just means they're expressing their anger in a way that has to do something with their struggle to maintain their peacefulness.
Yeah, and it's almost like they get mad in certain opportunities when people kind of create conflict for them. It's like, I shouldn't have to deal with that conflict,
Yes.
and it makes me mad. But I won't fight with you. I'll just be, grumpy. But it's, yeah.
So a lot of times when, we're working with nines, there will be things coming up with, having to deal with conflict among their subordinates, for example. So their subordinates, might be at a loggerhead over something and they want the nine to come in and break the tie and, make a decision, and they avoid doing it. So they, they don't want to choose one side over the other. So they say, well, you guys work it out and come back to me. And so something can drag on. And I have seen this become a handicap. And related to that is not desiring to deal with underperformers, right? There's I've got people in my organization who are not performing well, but you know what? They're trying hard and they're a nice person, and you know what? They need the job. So, they've worked here a long time, whatever it is. And I've seen this a number of times where the nine is getting pressure from above to, you got to fix this in your organization here. These people aren't doing their jobs. You got to do something about it. And they think that they're protecting the people below them by not dealing with it. And then the 9 gets fired, and everybody below them who's not performing gets fired as well. So they all end up losing their jobs. And so this is something, I just can't tell you how many times I've had to help 9s deal with that situation.
Yeah, another thing that it's really common to find when you're coaching a 9, it's how they're not clear. They're fussy around agreements and details. They think they're clear, but they're not. Sometimes they give too much context or too many details so that they don't have to get to the hard answer. Or they think they said yes, but they didn't say anything. So with a 9, you need to be very careful about what they're saying and what they're not saying, because they're fussy, because that allows them to not create conflict in their minds. Yeah. But people go away with whatever perception they got.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like they're creating a non-answer that provides everybody the opportunity to figure out their own answer for it. Or because they don't want to say no to something, they give the impression that they're saying yes when they never said yes, they just didn't say no either. So we always tell our clients who have to work with 9s to make sure that they get a very precise and clear yes or no on a topic like that. So
I've heard from several 9 friends of how many times they've been included on the list of best friends, and they're like, I can't remember the last time I talked to them. But everyone just assumes that, he's nice to me, so he must be my best friend. And they just have never.
Yeah, 9s have a gift for that, to be able to make people feel okay, right? Yeah. So when they're talking about, to them, it's like, they soften everything, or they keep that connection just enough to make the other person feel okay. And they are likable people, right? I mean, most of the 9s that you encounter, they're good-willed toward people. They're easy to get along with. They're nice, and so you rarely hear anybody saying, "Oh, I hate that person," about a 9. They just don't. They don't have enough sharp edges to attach hate to. So
yeah, what might frustrate people the most, or a bit, is the blind spot, passive aggression, because they might say yes just so that they don't fight, but never plan on doing it or taking more time, and they do that in a way that it's just so that you don't bother me. I'll just say whatever it works so that I get out of this conversation without fighting, but then I will never do it. And that's something that when you tell 9s, it's like you have caught them. It's like, yeah, I do that. They know they do it, and they almost laugh about it because they think they get away with it, but people around them get really frustrated.
Yeah, there are 9s in my life that will say they can do something or show up in a certain way, and then last minute she's like, oh, I said yes to too many things because I didn't want to say no to anything. And yeah.
One of my favorite movies about 9s is Wonder Boy. The Wonder Boys. Yeah, sorry, it's been a while. With Michael Douglas, who often plays a 9 in movies. And what are you laughing about?
The age. I mean, your movie repertoire. Anyway.
Now, did this have does this movie have sound?
It was in color as well.
In color, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was from the 90s. Come on, man. So Michael Douglas plays this author who he had written, and he's a university professor as well, but he had written this book that got a lot of critical acclaim when he was younger, and everybody was waiting for his next book. And, so, and one of the plots of the movies was that he had been working on this book, and his editor shows up, wants to see where it is, and he kept saying, well, it's not ready yet. I'm still working on it, and so, and it turned out he had like 1,000 pages typed, right? But it still wasn't done. And when somebody said to him, what's taking so long? He said, I just couldn't stop it. Right. And so it was like this, I just couldn't, put my flag on the hill and say, this is the end. And to me, that captured so much about the inner mindset of the 9. And when they talk, sometimes you can hear this speaking style that is kind of wandering and meandering, right? Going from point to point and circling back and looping up and down and all these sort of things. Like they're kind of speaking out loud, but also thinking of ways not to say anything too definitively, right? So they kind of have to talk around things and go in circles and that sort of thing. So, so again, it gets back to that fuzziness idea that María José talked about. I just want to be clear too. We're talking about the challenges that 9s face, and again, we've worked with really, really capable and successful 9s who learn to manage these things and to overcome some of these and not fall into the traps. I had one client who was a 9, and he was the head of a really big engineering organization in a company, and over the years, he had to learn how to fire people, because every so often they do these downsizings. And so it's like, okay, get rid of 10% of your team, right? And so he has to go and he'd do it. And then finally, he was getting close enough to retirement age, and they came along and they said, we need you to cut 15% or something. And he said, you know what? I've done this a lot of times before. I just can't do it again. I just can't take it. And he retired and, turned it over to somebody else, because it was just one more knock to his inner peace that he didn't know if he could survive.
Can either of you think of a more recent example of how you've worked with a 9, taking them through the ATA process?
Sometimes 9s, or many times, they don't speak up in meetings.
Yeah.
They think, why should I say anything if it was already said? Or what if I'm wrong? But it's mainly like, will people really value my opinion? Because it's like saying what everybody else is saying, it's not worth it. And what I work with them is that whenever they don't do that, and we're talking about senior people here, okay? So if you're sitting at a table of senior people, you're expected to say something. You're expected to add value. And when you don't, it's like, why is this person sitting on this table? We can get rid of him or her. And they might understand that, but they don't always see it. But the other thing is that they're not peaceful inside anyway. They're thinking, do I say this? What if I say it and it comes across like this way? So it's not peaceful. So they're not accomplishing peace. So working with a 9, it's like, first of all, you're expected. It's just, and people will think, they will not think that you're thinking about all of these things. They will say, he has nothing to contribute. And how does that make you feel? Well, not great. So, but that's something that most times I have to work with clients, even at senior roles. It's like they have an issue with stating their point, because they just don't want to come across as arrogant or repeat or take too much space. But they don't take enough, and they end up being overlooked, as we said at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to kind of emphasize that, because, the self-deprecation and speaking up in meetings and self-promotion are the classic things that you work with nines, right? Just over and over and over again. And I just had the same situation last week with a type 9 client, right? Who just, again, people say he's got good ideas, but you never hear them, right? And I remember, a few years back hearing somebody say about a 9 in a senior level meeting. It was after the meeting, the 9 wasn't still there, but he said, why is that guy in the room sucking up our oxygen for no reason? It's like,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty harsh, right? But, when you're playing at that level, like Maria Jose said, you're there to make a contribution. And if you're not, then not. And again, it's not like this creates this peacefulness, like Maria Jose saying. They're sitting there and they're you think, if you look at them, you think, oh, they're just sitting there calmly, not a care in the world, thinking about bunnies and rainbows or something. But the reality is what they're thinking is, should I say this or shouldn't I? No, if I say this, then people are going to think I'm this, or I shouldn't say that, or maybe it's a stupid idea, so I shouldn't say it. So I'm just going to sit here because I don't want to be that guy and blah, blah, blah. And then somebody else says what they were thinking, and they, and everybody says, hey, that's a great idea, and then the 9 is sitting there thinking, man, I should have said that. Why didn't I say that? Now, I'm stupid. I should have said that, and blah, 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 and they go back to their office and they're pissed off and, all these sort of things. So we often undermine getting the thing that we want to get most.
Yeah, and it's about being present, being active, and it could be asking questions, but they want, but you're expected to be kind of contributing in some way.
Yeah, without being the blowbag who just is speaking to have their voice heard. And that's
but 9s, I think that in my experience, they would never become that,
Right.
And in their minds, they are able to. So in their minds, when you tell them to speak up, it's like being like that person who never stops talking,
Yeah.
So you need to address that distortion. It's like, we're not talking about that. And you would have to be born again to become that. So just say what you think.
Yeah. We all fall into a trap of thinking that thing that we're avoiding is the only binary option from the way that we're behaving, right? So the 9, when you start telling them, look, you got to contribute more, what they're thinking is, I don't want to be that guy, right? Because there's always that guy in the room who's just, saying dumb stuff and wanting to get their voice heard. And so they think those are my only choices, right? I'm either too quiet or I'm that guy. But all of us do that in our own way, related to our own type. And we have to remember that these things exist on a continuum, not a binary. And to Maria Jose's point, you're not going to get anywhere close to that end of the continuum. So don't even worry about that. Just spit something out.
Mario, are you ever considered the quiet guy, or are you that guy? What do you find yourself being mostly?
I have a gift for being both.
Wow.
Actually.
All right.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So when I met Mario, and I think I've told this story, the first meetings, he was quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised. And I say, why didn't you talk more? I even started coaching him or saying why didn't you talk more? I think
It was so
you have a lot to contribute. And he was like, yeah, sure. And he was just making everything happen behind the scenes and just see the show go on during the meeting, But I didn't know that at the time. So he can look like a 9 sometimes at a meeting, but something very different is happening inside his head.
Yes. So one other thing that you guys do is you use the accelerator to help your clients grow. What's the accelerator 4.9?
Generativity. So generativity is doing something for the next generations or something like that. But it's so for us, it's like active engagement with the world, helping someone or a group of people, like mentoring or people who are new or younger. And this is without so it's easier for them to engage in that, because it's not like they are going to be seen as arrogant at the end. It's not like I feel great about myself, so this is why I'm doing it. It's because I'm helping other people. And that helps them feel more value, that it's also the core quality at point 3, more confident about themselves, and like a better person as well. So it's a way to show up in a less threatening way.
Yeah. It's also a way for them to remind themselves that they do have a contribution to make, right? The 9s are really good. Again, if we go back to the self-deprecation thing, they're really good at forgetting what they have to offer. And they think, well, who am I to mentor someone? Who am I to coach someone? And then when you kind of force them to do it, they start to say, hey, wow, I've actually got a lot to offer, right? I've built up so many years of experience and et cetera. So, and this helps to kind of rebuild their confidence and remind them that, oh, wait a minute, I do have something to say of value, so I'm going to start doing it more. And it also takes away the idea that contributing is showing off in some way or self-centered in some way, and shows that, contributing in this way is actually a gift to other people. And that's the difference between generativity and, say, mentoring or coaching. Generativity is, look, I just don't expect anything in return, right? I'm just sharing this stuff that I have with you. It comes from Erik Erikson, the psychologist, and he thought about it as kind of the grandparenting stage, where it's, the grandparent, they've done their time, they've made their investment, they don't have to, with the grandchild, they get to hand them back off when the things get hard. But in the meantime, it's, I'm just going to love you, I'm just going to give you advice, I'm going to support you, I'm going to teach you to do this, teach you to do that. And it's just pure giving without expectation of anything in return, as long as they're reasonably psychologically healthy. But so again, for the 9, that reminds them, oh, wait, I'm not so useless after all.
All right. Any final remarks for coaching 9s?
To me, coaching 9s, it's like, I feel like I have to wake them up. It's like shake them a bit, confront them with their own ambition, having them state what they want. And if I don't get that at the beginning, the rest of the work is sort of useless. So waking them up in that way helps work on the other things, because they want to. They're kind of hungry for it. They want to get better, but it's the wake up.
Yeah. You coach different people differently, right? Mm. And so with some people, you can be more directive, right? Just say, stop doing that. Do this instead, right? And, people who go to coaching schools will tell you, oh, you're not supposed to do that, blah, blah, blah. It's fine to do that with the right people. Okay? But 9s, I always get the sense of, you kind of like feeding a squirrel in the park, right? When my kids were little, we would go to the park and they'd want to feed the squirrels, and they'd go running after the squirrels to try to give them food, right? And the squirrels would run away and go up a tree or whatever. But the way to feed a squirrel is you just hold it out and you kind of let them come to you, and you let them make the commitment and the decision and so forth. And so with some 9s, it can be the same way of, you have to kind of lead them up, but have them see why this is useful. You can't just tell them, hey, look, if you do this, then this will happen. You can, but it's not going to have the same impact if they see the mistake they're making in their own minds first.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Awareness to Action Enneagram podcast. We'll talk to you in about 2 weeks.
So long.